Good morning and welcome to this week's Lunch and Learn. My name is Jessica Wells and I'm the social worker that covers the East Valley offices here at Ironwood. I'm so excited to have each and every one of you join me today as we talk about today's topic of survivor's guilt. It's something that's often come up when I'm meeting with patients, so I thought it would be great to talk about it so that others know that they're not alone. So what is survivor's guilt? So it can be considered a part of post-traumatic stress disorder, depending on its severity. And is more often categorized as overwhelming feelings of sadness that one might experience. So you may be thinking to yourself, what causes survivor's guilt? Because it's definitely a concept that is not exclusive to cancer patients. Those that are veterans can experience survivor's guilt. Other, national catastrophes can also experience survivor's guilt. Those types of things. But in the context of cancer, the most common causes that you see are feelings of guilt when others have passed as a result of their diagnosis, when you're still thriving, when things are going well for you with treatment, prognosis, etc. Oftentimes, it can also be due to guilt that you might experience due to having to be taken care of by loved ones. I hear so often that patients feel bad that their spouse is having to take off work to drive them to treatment, or if they're at home sick and experiencing side effects of treatment, feeling guilt that loved ones are having to clean up after them, get them water, cook for them, take over some of the household tasks that they normally might be doing. So those are all things that can be contributing factors to survivor's guilt. In addition, things like the varying lengths of treatment. So let's take, for example, breast cancer. So if there's a breast cancer patient that maybe their only treatment modality that they need is a lumpectomy, they might feel guilt if they hear of another breast cancer patient who has to undergo a double mastectomy plus radiation plus chemotherapy. So that can also trigger survivor's guilt and be a contributing factor, as can stage of illness and prognosis. A lot of times, if someone is diagnosed with a stage 0, stage 1 cancer, they may feel guilt by hearing of those that have an advanced stage cancer, stage 3, stage 4, etc. And prognosis as well. If maybe somebody has been given a terminal diagnosis and they have an earlier stage, they may feel guilt in regards to, well, why is my cancer an easier cancer and so-and-so's is not? So I think a lot of what can spur survivor's guilt sometimes is comparative suffering. And I think the harsh reality is we do live in a society that puts a lot of emphasis on comparative suffering. Think back, I think we've all heard, if we're eating something as a small child and our parents, and we're done eating and our parents say, oh, there's starving children elsewhere, you need to eat your food. That's a form of comparative suffering, where we're comparing our circumstances to the plight of someone else's. And what ends up happening is it minimizes what we're often experiencing. Comparative suffering, by definition, is feeling the need to see one's suffering in light of others' pain. So I see this happening a lot with amongst cancer patients, and not necessarily that patients are saying it to one another, but members of their support system are. Where if a patient, for example, is saying, I don't feel good today, my stomach is hurting today. Oh, it could be worse, right? Or so-and-so had cancer and their stomach never hurt, or, someone has advanced stage cancer, it's not that bad. Those things can also trigger guilt, because then you can start to feel like, okay, well, maybe I shouldn't complain, I shouldn't feel bad, those things. But what really happens with comparative suffering and comparing yourself to others is that you can start to lose your ability to be empathetic to others. You can start to lose your ability to sit and bear witness to others in a way that is most meaningful and honoring to and for them. And it's not mutually exclusive. You can acknowledge that the situation that you're going through, your diagnosis, regardless of stage, regardless of prognosis, is the worst for you, and still be able to understand and be empathetic to the experience of somebody else. It's not mutually exclusive. So I would definitely, try to refrain from comparing yourselves to others. It can be very easy to do, or even with your loved ones, if they offer to you, at least it's not this, it could be worse. Feeling comfortable to share with them that them offering that is unfortunately minimizing your experience, your thoughts, your feelings, and causing you to experience unnecessary guilt. So what are some ways that we can cope with survivor's guilt when it comes up? Number one is acknowledging your feelings. Naming your feelings is so important because it gives you an opportunity to really say, okay, what is it that I'm feeling, that I'm experiencing? Okay, I'm feeling guilt, but why? Oh, okay, it's because, I usually would do all of the laundry and now I can't and somebody has to help. So maybe looking at other ways that you can feel useful and feel like you're helpful around the home. So maybe due to signs and symptoms of treatment, maybe you're not able to do all of the laundry anymore, but maybe you can at least put the laundry in the washer, or put the detergent in, or put the clothes in the dryer, or maybe you can sit and fold some of those. So even if you can't complete the whole task, I would look at different aspects that you may be able to do or feel comfortable doing if it helps you regain that sense of independence, which most often cancer patients want that. You guys want to feel as though you're still valuable and not just allowing the diagnosis to take over your life. Also, allowing yourself to grieve. I cannot stress this enough. And grieving on your own terms. Again, so often I hear patients share stories about being told by others, especially once they've stopped treatment. Oh, you don't even have cancer anymore. Why are you still worried about that? Or why are you tired? You're not in treatment anymore. Those types of things, which can then further feelings of guilt to where you as the patient may think, well, why am I still tired? Why am I still having low energy? Why am I experiencing all of those things? And I always say cancer is a chronic illness. And a lot of people don't recognize or realize that. Even once you're done with treatment, there are still lots of follow-ups that you have to do for an extended period of time. And giving yourself that grace to understand it's not like flipping a light switch. You're not going to stop treatment and then all of a sudden be like, okay, great, and be able to resume activities that you would have prior to ever being diagnosed. Sometimes random acts of kindness can be helpful to help lessen some of that guilt you might experience or be feeling due to being taken care of. Doing a random act of kindness for your caregiver or a friend or family member, just anybody in general, may help alleviate some of those. If you're feeling like, you're a burden on loved ones, maybe write them a sweet little note that says, thank you so much for making that soup for me. It was really so good and it was really soothing to my soul. Or thank you so much for taking me to radiation treatment. I know driving every day can be awful. Here's maybe $5 for gas or something like that. The beauty of it is that you get to decide what's going to be most meaningful to and for you. And just kind of go, using that as a baseline can be helpful in mitigating some of these experiences. And definitely self-care. I am always talking to my patients that come to support groups about self-care. You cannot pour from an empty cup. And it's important that you're taking the time to check in with yourself mentally, emotionally, to say, how am I doing today? I think so often, in society, if somebody's like, hey, how are you? We automatically do the like, oh, I'm fine, thanks. It's okay. Instead of saying, it's not a good day today. And that doesn't necessarily mean that you have to elaborate and share all of the reasons why it's not why it's not a good day, but just sharing, today's not a good day. Thank you so much for checking in on me. I really appreciate it. Or, I don't really feel up to talking today, but thank you. I'll give you a call or follow up with you when I'm feeling a little bit better. Those types of things are considered a form of self-care. And I know a lot of times we tend to think of grandiose things like self-care, massages, shopping sprees, things like that. And while those can be a form of self-care, it can be things that are a little bit smaller scale. Gratitude journaling can even help minimize some of the guilt you might be experiencing, and helping to identify that it is okay for you to be grateful, and there are things that you can be grateful about, again, while also understanding that someone else's plight and experience might be different than yours. Everybody's resiliency is different. Everybody copes with things differently. So on the flip side of that, if you feel as though you're coping differently than someone else, that doesn't mean that they're coping better than you or they're coping worse than you. It's all relative. So how you are experiencing what you're experiencing is the right way to be doing it, because it's you, and you're allowed to say, this makes me anxious, this makes me angry, I'm depressed about this, those types of things. It's a cyclical process, because that's just how grief works, right? It's very cyclical in nature. And there may be a day where we're feeling like, okay, I'm accepting this diagnosis that I have. I'm accepting that I'm going through treatment and things of that nature. And then the very next minute, you may be very angry because, say, your friends decide they want to go out for coffee and you may not feel comfortable doing that because you're immune compromised. So just giving yourself grace and acknowledging that you're exactly where you need to be in handling and managing your diagnosis, and that you don't need to compare yourself to others in that regard. And as I said before, comparing yourselves to others consistently can lessen your empathy. And oftentimes I do see patients that start to harbor anger towards others who don't even have cancer, as well as those that do have cancer, because it's kind of that attitude of, oh, look at this person off living their life, not having any negative experiences, not having any challenges. And I'm over here having to go for chemo, having to go for radiation, having surgery, having doctor's appointments, having scans, all these things. It can lessen your empathy in that regard, and it can turn into a sympathetic response to where you start to feel sorry for yourself. And there is a staunch difference between sympathy and empathy. For those that might be struggling with survivor's guilt, or have some thoughts and feelings that you want to share and process with others that are in very similar situations, I would definitely recommend our survivor support group that we have here at Ironwood. It's held the fourth Monday of every month from 6 to 7:30 p.m. We are still holding those groups virtually by Zoom. You can email wellness@ironwoodcrc.com or call our supportive care services coordinator, Emily, at 480-314-6660. You can let Emily know, or in the email, let them know that you're interested in attending the survivor support group. And then we can get you added to the list so that you can meet with other survivors that might be experiencing very, very similar thoughts and things of that nature that you are, in regards to how to manage some of those feelings. We also have an amazing, amazing resource on our YouTube channel. If you go to youtube.com and search in Ironwood and put in the search bar, Ironwood Cancer and Research Center, there's tons of videos that myself and our other social worker, Nicole McAllister, have done, as well as our dietitians, our geneticist, Dr. Rula. There's just a plethora of information that's there. And the biggest thing we always want each and every one of you guys to know is that you're not alone. Cancer can feel very isolating. You can feel like nobody else gets it. But please understand you do have a family and a community here, and please utilize the S&D's resources however you see fit. So I did see that we had some questions come in, so I will go ahead and read through some of those and get those answered for those of you that are watching with me today. So one of the questions that came in is, how long is it normal to be sad? And so I feel like that's a difficult question to ask because it's so subjective, right? It goes back to the fact that everybody has different coping skills. Everybody has different levels of resiliency. So my idea of normal may not feel comfortable for you. So I would say you know yourself best. You are the expert on yourself. You know if the feelings that you've been experiencing are starting to impact your daily living. And that's what I would use as a baseline. Are you no longer able to get out of bed? Are you no longer able to participate in things that brought you some semblance of joy? Are you no longer taking care of yourself? Are you not brushing your teeth, showering, changing clothes, those types of things? If that is the case, then that's definitely an indicator that you want to seek professional help from a therapist or something like that can help walk you through those feelings. So another question we have is, if my friend is happy with his success in fighting cancer and I'm not doing great with my cancer, how do I politely have him tone it down? Or is that not right? So I think, that's kind of multi-dynamic, right? So you have boundaries where it's always okay for us to shield ourselves and protect our peace from things that are going to cause us to feel less than pleasurable, right? But it kind of goes back to that comparative suffering aspect. So I'm sure you're still probably very happy that your friend is having success with their treatment, that things are going well. Maybe scans are coming back with showing, reduction of disease or stabilization or those types of things. So I would say, if you feel comfortable expressing to them, I'm so great that, labs came back clear. I'm so glad to hear that you finished your chemo or you just have one more round of chemo left, but also feel free to share with them, hey, I'm not in a good place to talk right now. Or, depending on the level of the friendship, you can say, it's really hard for me to hear how things are going well because I'm still scared about what if that doesn't happen for me. So I think it's about how you communicate your feelings to your friend. If you're just like, shut up, I don't care about what you're going through, that's probably going to isolate your friend and you may lose that friend. But I think it's all about in how you communicate what your needs are to your friend, because if they're a friend, right, they're going to love and care about you and your feelings. So I would assume you would feel comfortable to some extent being able to share your feelings with them. Let's see. I just want to make sure I'm not missing any other questions that we have. Okay, so we have, is it normal to have survivor's guilt? Yes, it absolutely is. How long and how much of a problem does it have to be before it's a cause for concern? Again, you know yourself best. You're the expert on yourself. You know what's going to be your normal, right? So again, I would say if you're starting to notice, you're maybe having anger outbursts, it's impacting your sleep, it's impacting your, ability to participate in your daily life, as things I mentioned before, that might be a time to say, hey, I need to talk to somebody to help me better process this. Survivor's guilt is a very normative thing. I have never met anybody that's gone through a cancer diagnosis that has not experienced some form of survivor's guilt. So it is very normative. And again, naming it so that you can have an awareness and then can pay attention to what is triggering it for you, so that again, you can put those boundaries in place. So again, if it is hearing stories about how well people may be doing with their treatment and you feel like you are not at that level, then maybe putting a boundary in place so that you're not having as much exposure to those types of stories until you feel more comfortable and confident in being able to process those types of things. So great questions, you guys. I always love when you're able to tune in and join us. And I always appreciate the opportunity to sit and bear witness to each and every one of you and your stories. So thank you for allowing me to share with each of you today. As I said, you can check us out on our YouTube channel. All of our Lunch and Learns are housed there if you missed one and want to go back and watch it, or if you want to rewatch this one, if there's something that you missed, it will be up on our YouTube channel later as well. So thank you to each and every one of you for your time. I understand time is our most valuable commodity, and so it really means the world to me that you took time out of your busy day to sit present with me today. Take care and be well.